You lie awake again, and the light from your phone casts shadows across the ceiling. The screen glows with faces, dozens of them, hundreds maybe, arranged in neat rows, smiling from somewhere you've never been, saying things you'll forget by morning. You scroll, and the motion is automatic now, a reflex without intention, and somewhere in the back of your mind you notice the emptiness of it, the way your thumb moves, but your chest stays hollow. You have more connections than any human being who has ever lived. More names in your contacts, more faces you recognize, at least in passing, more opportunities to reach out, to say something, to bridge whatever distance might exist between you and another living soul. And yet, when you really stop to consider it, when you pull yourself out of the momentum of the scroll and the endless feed of partial presences, you realize something unsettling. You're not sure who actually sees you anymore. Not really. Not in the way that word once meant. There was a time, you can almost remember it, or maybe you've just convinced yourself you can, when someone looked at you and knew. Not just your name or your face or the things you chose to share, but something underneath all that, the way you held your shoulders when you were trying not to cry, the particular silence that meant you were angry versus the silence that meant you were afraid, the rhythm of your breathing when you sat beside them, doing nothing, saying nothing, just existing in the same small space. That kind of knowing required proximity. It required duration. It required the kind of sustained and undistracted attention that feels almost impossible now, almost quaint, like something out of a story from another age. You wonder when it started to fade. Not suddenly. Nothing important ever disappears suddenly. It was gradual, imperceptible, the way warmth leaves a room when a window is cracked open in winter. You didn't notice it leaving. You only noticed one day that it was gone. Maybe it was when you moved away for work and the friendships you'd built over years became text messages, became birthday wishes, became silence punctuated by occasional bursts of catch-up that never quite caught up with anything real. Maybe it was when everyone got busier, when life started demanding more hours, more efficiency, more productivity, and the slow art of just being with someone became a luxury you couldn't afford. Maybe it was when screens became the primary portal through which you encountered other human beings, and the full-bodied experience of presence got compressed into profile pictures and status updates and carefully curated glimpses. Or maybe it started even earlier. Maybe it started when you first learned to keep parts of yourself hidden, to perform rather than reveal, to manage how you were perceived rather than simply allowing yourself to be perceived. Maybe the fading began the moment you realized that being truly seen also meant being truly vulnerable, and vulnerability, you'd learned, was dangerous. You're not lonely exactly. Loneliness suggests an absence of people, and you have people. You have friends you text, colleagues you talk to, family members you call on holidays. You have acquaintances and connections and a whole network of social threads that link you to the wider world. But there's something else missing, something harder to name. It's not the quantity of connection that troubles you. It's the quality, the depth, the sense that someone, somewhere, is holding the full weight of who you are in their attention. Not just the edited highlights, not just the parts you've decided are acceptable to share. You think about your grandmother sometimes, the way she used to talk about the people in her life. She didn't have many, not compared to your hundreds of digital connections. But when she spoke about them, there was a richness to it, a texture. She knew the neighbors, knew their histories, knew the specific way Mrs. Chen from down the street liked her tea, and the way Mr. Rodriguez's limp got worse when it rained. She knew these things because she'd paid attention, because she'd been there, day after day, year after year, watching and being watched in return. There was no privacy in that kind of life, you remind yourself. No escape from the weight of other people's opinions, other people's expectations. And yet, there was also no anonymity. No one was invisible. Everyone was known, for better and worse. And that knowing was both a burden and a kind of belonging you can barely imagine now. You live in a world where you can be anyone, reinvent yourself endlessly, curate and edit and optimize your presentation until it barely resembles the messy reality underneath. You have freedom your grandmother never dreamed of, but you also have something she never experienced: the deep, persistent suspicion that no one really knows you, and that even if they did, they might not have the time or attention to care. The modern condition isn't loneliness. It's something stranger. It's the experience of being surrounded by people while simultaneously feeling unseen. It's having 1,000 shallow connections and no deep ones. It's the peculiar isolation of being known by everyone and understood by no one. You remember moments. They come to you sometimes, unbidden, usually late at night when your defenses are down. Moments when someone really looked at you. A friend who noticed you were struggling before you said anything. A partner who could read your mood from the way you moved through a room. A parent who knew, without asking, what you needed. These moments are rare now. Rare enough that they stand out. Rare enough that you hold on to them like precious things. Evidence that you exist beyond the surface, beyond the performance. But they're becoming rarer still. Everyone is distracted now. Everyone is half present. Attention split between the person in front of them and the device in their pocket. Between the conversation happening now and the dozen other conversations happening simultaneously in other windows, other apps, other streams of consciousness. You do it too. You're as guilty as anyone. You've had entire conversations where you couldn't remember afterward what was actually said because you were only partly there. The rest of you scattered across notifications and news feeds and the endless low-grade anxiety of staying connected. This is the bargain you've made, though you never consciously agreed to it. You've traded depth for breadth, intimacy for access, the slow accumulation of shared experience for the instant gratification of digital acknowledgement. You can reach anyone, anywhere, anytime. But you can't, not really, because reaching someone requires more than technology. It requires presence. It requires the kind of sustained, embodied attention that has become almost extinct in your world of constant distraction and infinite choice. Sometimes you catch yourself wondering what it would be like to be known the way your ancestors were known. Not by algorithms that track your preferences and predict your behavior, but by actual human beings who witnessed your life unfold in real time, in physical space, across years and decades. To have someone who could tell your story, not from your social media posts, but from having walked beside you, having shared meals and silences and the accumulated weight of ordinary days. You imagine sitting across from someone, not texting, not video calling, but actually sitting in the same room, breathing the same air, and having nothing to prove. No performance to maintain, no carefully constructed image to uphold. Just the raw, unedited experience of being seen and accepted anyway. Or not accepted, maybe. Maybe sometimes being truly seen means being rejected, being challenged, being told difficult truths. But at least it would be real. At least it would mean someone cared enough to look closely. The restlessness you feel isn't new. It's not unique to you. It's humming beneath the surface of everything now, a collective unease that no one quite knows how to name. And you see it in the way people compulsively check their phones, searching for something they can't articulate. You see it in the endless scroll, the constant consumption of other people's curated lives, the hunger for connection that never quite gets satisfied. You see it in the exhaustion everyone carries, the sense of being simultaneously overstimulated and undernourished, overwhelmed by information, but starving for meaning. This is the paradox of your time. You have unprecedented access to other human beings, and yet you've never felt more separate from them. You can see into the lives of people on the other side of the planet, but you barely know the person who lives next door. You can maintain hundreds of friendships through digital means, but you can't remember the last time you had a conversation that left you feeling truly understood. And underneath all of this, beneath the restlessness and the scrolling and the persistent low-level dissatisfaction, there's a deeper question that you rarely let yourself ask directly. When did this happen? When did the warmth of being truly seen begin to fade? And more troubling still, can you even remember what that warmth felt like? Or have you been performing and managing and curating for so long that you've forgotten what it's like to simply be known? You think maybe this is why you can't sleep. Not just tonight, but most nights. Because when you lie down and turn off all the screens and sit with yourself in the darkness, you become aware of the absence, the hollow place where deep connection used to be, and the silence where recognition once lived. And it's easier, so much easier, to pick up the phone again, to scroll through faces that look familiar but feel distant, to maintain the illusion of connection rather than confronting the reality of its absence. But the hollowness remains. And somewhere, in a part of yourself you don't often access, you know that what you're looking for can't be found on a screen. It requires something you've almost forgotten how to do: showing up, fully, repeatedly, in the same physical space, with the same people, without distraction, without performance, without the escape hatch of digital distance. It requires the slow, unglamorous work of being present, of allowing yourself to be witnessed over time, of accumulating the shared experiences that create genuine intimacy. Your grandmother's world wasn't better. Yet you know this. It was harder in almost every measurable way. But it had something yours doesn't. It had embeddedness. It had the kind of deep social fabric that comes from necessity, from proximity, from the simple fact that people couldn't escape each other, even if they wanted to. And in that inescapability, in that forced intimacy, something emerged that you've lost. The experience of being truly, fully, unavoidably known. You don't want to go back. You wouldn't give up your freedom, your privacy, your ability to choose your own path. But you also can't shake the feeling that in gaining all of this, you've lost something essential, something your nervous system still craves, even though your conscious mind has learned to live without it. The feeling of being held in someone's attention, and the security of knowing that your existence matters to someone beyond what you can produce or provide. The warmth of recognition that doesn't require you to earn it, that simply exists because you're part of the fabric of someone's daily life. This is the ache you carry. This is the restlessness that keeps you scrolling, searching, never quite finding what you need. Because what you need can't be delivered through a screen. It can't be optimized or scaled or made more efficient. It requires time and patience, and the willingness to be vulnerable in ways that feel almost dangerous in a world that rewards self-sufficiency and independence above all else. And so you lie here, in the glow of your phone, surrounded by faces you no longer recognize, not because they've changed, but because you never really knew them in the first place. Or do you have their names, their images, their carefully selected updates? But you don't have them. Not in the way that matters, not in the way that soothes the ancient part of your brain that still expects to be embedded in a web of sustained, embodied relationships. Not in the way that allows you to rest. The light from the screen continues to cast its pale glow across the ceiling, and you continue to scroll, looking for something you can't name, missing something you're not sure you ever really had, at least not in this lifetime. But the memory of it lives somewhere in your cells, passed down through generations who knew what it meant to be seen, to be held in the sustained attention of a community, to belong in a way that wasn't contingent on performance or productivity or the careful management of your image. That memory is what pulls at you now. That memory is what won't let you sleep. Long before cities rose from the earth, before roads connected distant places, before anyone thought to compress human connection into pixels and data, there were fires. Small ones usually, just large enough to hold back the darkness and warm the circle of bodies gathered close. And in that circle, in the dancing light that caught faces and made them glow, you would have known everyone. Not known in the modern sense, not known their email address or their job title or what they like to post on social media. You would have known them in a way that's almost incomprehensible now. You would have known the sound of their breathing in sleep, the particular way they walked, recognizable from a distance even before you could make out their features. The stories their scars told, the fears that woke them in the night, the gifts they brought to the group and the burdens they carried. This knowing wasn't optional. It wasn't something you chose, like following someone online or adding them to your contacts. It was the basic condition of existence. You were born into a world of faces, maybe 30, maybe 50, maybe 100 at most, and those faces would be your world until the day you died. There was no escaping into anonymity, no moving across the country to start fresh, no curating a different version of yourself for different audiences. You were known, completely and unavoidably, for better and worse. Imagine it for a moment. Really try to imagine it. You wake up, and within minutes, you encounter the same people you saw yesterday, the same people you'll see tomorrow. The woman who helped your mother give birth to you is still there, older now, her hands gnarled with age, but still capable. The man who taught you to track animals when you were small enough to fit in his shadow watches you now with eyes that have catalogued every stage of your growth. The children you played with as a toddler are still beside you, grown into adults with their own children, but carrying in their faces and movements the echoes of who they were when you were all young together. There's no privacy in this world. Everyone knows when you're sick, when you're struggling, when you fought with your partner, or failed at some task the community depends on. Your mistakes are witnessed. Your weaknesses are obvious. There's nowhere to hide, no way to maintain a false front for very long. The mask you wear, everyone wears masks, and this is as old as humanity itself, gets worn thin by constant contact, by the relentless scrutiny of people who see you every single day. And yet, in that relentless exposure, in that unavoidable intimacy, something happens that you can barely access in your modern life. You become real to people, not a representation of yourself, not a carefully edited highlight reel, not a profile or a persona or a brand. Just you, in all your complexity and contradiction, witnessed over time, known in a way that transcends words or explanations. When you feel sad in this world, you don't have to announce it. People notice. They notice the change in your posture, the way you move through tasks without your usual energy, the particular quality of your silence. And because they notice, because they've been paying attention to you not just today, but for years, they respond. Maybe not always in ways you'd prefer. Maybe sometimes with impatience or frustration. But they respond from a place of actual knowledge, not guesswork. They know you. They've seen this before in you, or they've seen it in others, and they understand in their bodies, not just their minds, what you need. The knowing goes both ways, of course. You know them too. You know who can be trusted with your child and who shouldn't be. You know who has the skill to help with a particular problem and who will only make it worse. You know the histories, the grudges, the alliances, the subtle web of relationships that holds the whole group together. This knowledge isn't stored in your head as abstract information. It's woven into your muscle memory, your instincts, in your gut feelings about how to navigate the complex social landscape you live in. Work, in this world, is different. Not because it's easier. It's often brutally hard, physically demanding in ways that would break most modern humans, but because it's shared and visible. When you gather food, process materials, build shelter, tend fire, everyone sees your contribution. They see when you work hard and when you slack off. They see your skills develop over time. They see you teaching the young ones what you know. And this visibility creates accountability, yes, but also appreciation. The group knows what they would lose if you weren't there. You have a place. This is the crucial thing, the thing that's almost impossible to replicate in modern life. You have a role that's recognized and valued, not because of credentials or qualifications, but because people have witnessed you filling it day after day, year after year. You're not replaceable, not really, because you're not just a function or a job title. You're a specific person with specific skills and relationships and history, and your absence would leave a specific hole in the fabric of the group. The children, especially, are held differently in this world. They're not primarily the responsibility of one or two exhausted parents trying to raise them in isolation. They're everyone's business. The older women watch them while parents work. The young adults play with them, teach them, carry them. The elders tell them stories, passing down not just information, but values, identity, a sense of belonging to something larger than themselves. A child in this world is seen by dozens of eyes every day. They're corrected by many hands, comforted by many voices, known by the whole community in a way that makes them feel, at a deep level, that they matter. And the elders, they're not set aside, warehoused, made invisible. They're there, in the center of things, slower maybe, less strong, but still essential. They hold the knowledge that can't be written down because it's never been written down. They remember the patterns. When the rains usually come, where the animals were scarce 20 years ago, which plants are medicine and which are poison, how to navigate conflicts that would otherwise tear the group apart. They've seen more seasons than anyone else, and in their seeing, they've become repositories of wisdom that the group depends on for survival. This is not a romantic picture. Don't let yourself slip into romance. So life in this world is hard. People die young. Diseases that would be minor inconveniences in your time are death sentences here. Childbirth is dangerous. Injuries that would require simple surgery in your world lead to infection, amputation, death. There's hunger sometimes, real hunger that gnaws at you for days or weeks. There's cold that seeps into your bones. There's violence, both within the group and from outside it. There's grief, profound and frequent, because everyone you love is right there beside you, and when they die, you can't escape the absence. And the scrutiny, that relentless, inescapable scrutiny, it's not always kind. People judge you. They gossip. They form opinions that may or may not be fair. You can't reinvent yourself, can't escape your reputation, can't move to a new place where no one knows your history. You're stuck with these people, and they're stuck with you. And sometimes that feels less like belonging and more like a trap. But here's what's also true. You're never alone with your suffering. When grief comes, the whole community knows. They sit with you. They wail with you. They don't try to fix it or make it more comfortable or rush you through it. They simply bear witness, and in their witnessing, your grief becomes something shared, something woven into the collective story, rather than something you have to carry in isolation. When you're sick or injured, hands tend to you. Not professionals who disappear after their shift. The same hands that have touched you since childhood. Hands that know you. And even if they can't heal you, even if you're going to die anyway, you don't die alone. You die surrounded by faces you recognize. So voices you know, the smell and sound and touch of your people. The celebrations too are different. When something good happens, a successful hunt, a birth, a child's transition into adulthood, everyone participates. The joy isn't posted online for distant acquaintances to acknowledge with a quick reaction. It's experienced together, in bodies, through dance and feast and story. The happiness of one becomes the happiness of all, not as a performance, but as a genuine overflow of collective investment in each other's lives. Even the conflicts, the tensions that inevitably arise when people can't escape each other, have to be resolved differently. You can't block someone, or cut them off, or simply avoid them. You have to work it out somehow, because you'll be seeing them tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. So the group develops mechanisms for repair, for reconciliation, for finding ways to live together despite differences and hurts and betrayals. It's not always pretty, it's not always fair, but it keeps the fabric intact, keeps the web of relationships strong enough to hold everyone. This is the world your body was built for. Your nervous system, your emotional responses, your deep psychological needs, they were shaped over hundreds of thousands of years in contexts like this. Small groups, face-to-face interaction, sustained, embodied relationships, being known and knowing others in a way that's complete and unavoidable. Your brain expects this. It expects to recognize every face it sees regularly. It expects to understand its place in a stable social hierarchy. It expects to contribute to a group that needs it and to receive care from that group in return. It expects to be witnessed in its struggles and its triumphs, its growth and its decline. It expects, above all, to matter in a way that's visible and tangible, not abstract or mediated through technology. But this world is gone. Not entirely. There are still small communities, still places where people live in something approximating this kind of closeness. But for most humans alive today, this is ancient history. You live in cities of millions. You encounter more faces in a day than your ancestors encountered in a lifetime, and you recognize almost none of them. Your relationships are chosen, not given. Your community is dispersed across geography, connected by technology rather than proximity. You can curate your social world, so selecting people who affirm your worldview and avoiding those who challenge it. You have privacy, you have autonomy, you have freedom to become whoever you want to be, to move wherever you want to go, to reinvent yourself as many times as you please. These are real gifts. These are forms of liberation that your ancestors couldn't imagine. But they come with a cost that you're only beginning to understand. The cost is embeddedness. The cost is the bone-deep security of knowing your place, of being held in a web of sustained relationships, of mattering to people in a way that doesn't require constant effort or performance. The cost is being truly known, with all the discomfort and all the comfort that entails. And your body doesn't understand why this is gone. Your nervous system still expects it. When you lie down at night, or some ancient part of you is still listening for the breathing of the people who should be sleeping nearby. When you encounter strangers, your threat response systems activate in ways they never would if you were surrounded only by known faces. When you succeed or fail, create or struggle, some part of you is waiting for the recognition that should come from people who've witnessed your whole journey. But it doesn't come. Or it comes in diminished form, mediated through screens, expressed in likes and comments and shares that trigger a brief spike of pleasure, but don't satisfy the deeper hunger. Because the hunger isn't for acknowledgement in the abstract. It's for recognition from people who know you, who've seen you over time, who understand what this moment means in the context of your whole life. This is what you're mourning, even if you don't have words for it. Not the hardship of ancestral life, not the lack of medical care or the physical difficulties. You're mourning the loss of embeddedness, the loss of mattering in a way that's automatic and obvious, the loss of being known so completely that you don't have to explain yourself, don't have to perform, don't have to earn your place over and over again. You're mourning something you never actually experienced, which makes the mourning more complicated. It's not nostalgia for a personal past, but for an ancestral one, for a way of being human that's encoded in your biology, but absent from your experience. Your DNA remembers what your conscious mind never knew, what it feels like to be held in the sustained attention of a community, to be seen and known and valued simply because you exist, because you're part of the fabric, because your presence and absence both matter. This is why the modern solutions don't quite work, why therapy helps but doesn't fully satisfy, why online communities connect you but leave you feeling empty, why even good friendships, maintained across distance through technology, don't quite touch the place that aches. Because what you're craving isn't just connection. It's a specific kind of connection that requires physical proximity, sustained time, and the inability to escape each other. It requires being stuck with people in a way that forces you past the surface, past the performance, into the messy, uncomfortable, irreplaceable reality of being truly known. The irony is that you probably wouldn't like it if you got it. The lack of privacy would chafe. The inability to reinvent yourself would feel stifling. The constant scrutiny would wear you down. The obligations and expectations would feel like chains. You're too shaped by modernity, too accustomed to your freedoms, to fully appreciate what you've lost. You want the comfort without the constraint, the belonging without the burden. But they come together. They've always come together. You can't have one without the other. Still, the ache persists. The feeling that something essential is missing. The restlessness that drives you to scroll through faces at night, searching for a recognition that can't be delivered through pixels and data. The grief for something you can't quite name, something that lives in your cells but not in your memory, something that shaped humanity for hundreds of thousands of years but disappeared. One for most people in the blink of an eye. And maybe understanding this doesn't fix anything. Maybe you're still going to lie awake at night, still going to feel the absence, still going to search for something you can't find in the modern world. But maybe there's something in the understanding itself that helps. Maybe knowing that this ache isn't personal failure or individual pathology, but a reasonable response to a profound mismatch between your nature and your circumstances. Maybe that knowledge doesn't solve the problem, but it at least lets you stop blaming yourself for feeling it. You are not broken for wanting to be known. You are not weak for craving depth over breadth. You are not nostalgic for an imaginary past when you feel the absence of embeddedness in your life. You're simply a human being and carrying the same needs and desires that humans have always carried, trying to meet them in a world that's changed faster than your biology can adapt. The faces around the ancestral fire are gone. The small circle of known people, the sustained witnessing, the unavoidable intimacy. These things have largely vanished from human experience, at least in the form they once took. But the need for them remains, written into your nervous system, waiting to be acknowledged even if it can't be fully satisfied. And in acknowledging it, in naming the loss, maybe you create a little space for something else to emerge. Not a return to the past. That's impossible, and probably not even desirable. But perhaps a recognition of what matters, what nourishes, what your soul actually needs, beneath all the noise and distraction and digital connection. Perhaps a reorientation toward depth, toward presence, toward the slow accumulation of shared experience that creates genuine intimacy. Perhaps just the knowledge that the restlessness you feel is ancient, is shared, is the echo of a way of being human that's written into your bones even as it fades from the world around you. The lanterns have dimmed now, and the faces they illuminated are dissolving into shadow. Not disappearing entirely, but becoming softer, less distinct, merging back into the darkness from which they emerged. This is how memory works. This is how longing works. The sharp edges of what you've lost blur over time, becoming feeling more than fact, atmosphere more than detail. You can stop searching now. You can let the phone go dark. Let the endless scroll of faces finally come to rest. They were never what you were looking for anyway. You were looking for something older, something that exists beneath language and technology, beneath the whole architecture of modern life. You were looking for the feeling of being held in sustained attention, of mattering in a way that doesn't require justification or performance, or the constant management of how you're perceived. That feeling is so rare now that when you encounter it, even briefly, it startles you. Someone remembers a detail about your life that you mentioned in passing weeks ago. Someone notices a change in your energy before you've said anything. Someone shows up, physically shows up, and sits with you without needing to be entertained or impressed or even talked to. These moments break through the surface of your usual experience, and for a second, you remember what you've been missing. For a second, you taste what it might have been like to live in a world where such attention was ordinary, expected, woven into the basic fabric of daily life. But the moment passes. It has to. Because you live here In this time, in this world where depth has been traded for breadth and presence has been replaced by connection. You live in a world of abundance. More people, more information, more possibilities than your ancestors could have dreamed of. And yet, you move through this abundance feeling empty, feeling unseen, feeling like no one really knows who you are underneath all the layers of performance and protection you've built up over the years. This is not a problem you can solve, not really, not individually. The loss you're feeling is collective, structural, are woven into the very design of modern life. You can't personally recreate the conditions that allowed humans to be deeply known to each other for hundreds of thousands of years. You can't force the sustained proximity and shared necessity that generated authentic intimacy in ancestral communities. You can't escape the fragmentation and mobility and digital mediation that define your world. But you can stop pretending the loss isn't real. You can stop trying to fill the hollow place with more shallow connections, more content, more optimization of your social life. You can acknowledge that something essential has faded, that the warmth of being truly seen has become so rare that many people have forgotten it ever existed. And in acknowledging this, something shifts. Not externally. The world doesn't change. The structures that create isolation and disconnection remain firmly in place. But internally, something settles. The restless searching quiets a little. The frantic scrolling loses some of its compulsive energy. Because you've named the thing. You've recognized the shape of your hunger. And sometimes recognition itself is a kind of nourishment, even when it can't satisfy the hunger completely. You think about the ancestral fire again, but differently now. Not as something to be mourned or recreated, but as a reference point. A reminder of what human nervous systems were built for. A standard against which to measure the thinness of modern connection. And maybe, just maybe, a template for small acts of resistance against the forces that keep everyone separate, distracted, performing rather than present. What would it mean to tend a fire, and even a small one, in your own life? What would it mean to show up for people repeatedly in physical space without the escape hatch of digital distance? What would it mean to allow yourself to be known, really known, by even one or two people, to drop the performance and risk the vulnerability of being seen in your full complexity? These are not easy questions. The answers require sacrifice. They require saying no to the constant pull of more connections, more opportunities, more options. They require investing deeply in a small number of relationships rather than spreading yourself thin across dozens or hundreds. They require patience because this kind of knowing doesn't happen quickly. It requires time and repetition and the accumulation of shared experience that can't be rushed or optimized or made more efficient. Most of all, it requires accepting that you can't have everything. You can't have both the freedom and mobility of modern life and the deep embeddedness of ancestral communities. You can't maintain hundreds of digital connections and also have the bandwidth for sustained, embodied intimacy. You can't curate your image across multiple platforms and also risk being truly seen. The choices are real. The trade-offs are real. And no one can make them for you. But maybe you can make them more consciously. Maybe you can stop drifting along with the current of modern life, accumulating connections that don't nourish you, maintaining relationships that exist primarily on screens, performing a version of yourself that gets more exhausting to maintain every year. Maybe you can start asking different questions. Not, how can I optimize my social life, but who do I want to be known by? Not, how can I expand my network, but where do I want to be embedded? Not, how can I be more connected, but how can I be more present? The answers will be different for everyone. There's no formula, no 5-step process to recreate ancestral intimacy in modern life. But there are choices you can make. Small ones at first, turning off the phone during dinner, committing to regular in-person time with specific people, joining something local, something that requires your physical presence, something that can't be done from behind a screen. Staying put, geographically, long enough to accumulate the years of shared experience that create genuine community. These choices won't make you popular. They won't expand your influence or grow your platform. They'll actually limit you, constrain you, force you to say no to opportunities that might seem more exciting or prestigious. But they might, slowly, over time, begin to address the deeper hunger. They might create the conditions for the kind of sustained witness that allows someone to truly see you. And they might, in turn, allow you to truly see someone else, to hold them in your attention over time, to know them in a way that goes beyond profile updates and status posts. This is not nostalgia. This is not a call to return to some imaginary golden age. The past was hard. It was constrained. It involved suffering and limitation that you should be grateful you don't have to endure. But it also had something your time doesn't have, something your body still craves even though your mind has learned to live without it. And acknowledging that craving isn't weakness, it's honesty. It's recognizing that the trade-offs of modernity are real, that what you've gained has come at a cost, and that pretending otherwise only deepens the ache. The lantern light is almost gone now. The faces have faded into darkness, and you're left alone with yourself, with the silence, with the hollow place that no amount of digital connection can fill. But maybe that's okay. Maybe being alone with the emptiness is better than constantly fleeing from it. Maybe in the stillness, in the absence of distraction, something important can surface. Not a solution, not an answer, just a recognition, just an acknowledgement of what you've lost and what you still need, even in a world that seems determined to convince you that you don't need it. You are not the first person to feel this way. The ache you carry is shared by millions of others, scrolling through their own feeds at night, searching for their own version of recognition, feeling their own version of the loss. You're not alone in your disconnection, which is perhaps the saddest irony of modern life. You're connected to countless others who feel exactly as separate and unseen as you do. But knowing this doesn't solve the problem. It just makes it clearer. The issue isn't individual. It's not about your personal failure to maintain relationships or your inability to be vulnerable. It's about living in a world that's fundamentally mismatched with the kind of social environment your brain and body were designed for. It's about carrying needs that made perfect sense for hundreds of thousands of years, but seem almost impossible to meet in the current moment. And yet, even in this world, even in this time, moments of genuine recognition still happen. Someone still looks at you and sees you. Someone still knows you, even if incompletely. Someone still shows up, still pays attention, still holds space for the parts of you that aren't curated or optimized or carefully presented. These moments are rarer than they should be. They're harder to find than they used to be. But they still exist. Maybe that's enough. Maybe it has to be enough. Because you're not going to recreate the ancestral circle of sustained intimacy. You're not going to be embedded in a community the way your great-great-great-grandparents were. You're going to live in this modern world with all its freedoms and all its isolation, and you're going to have to find a way to be human within these constraints. But you can do it with your eyes open. You can stop pretending that digital connection is the same as embodied presence. You can stop filling your life with shallow relationships that leave you feeling empty. You can stop performing for an audience that doesn't really see you anyway. You can make different choices, harder choices, choices that require sacrifice and commitment and the willingness to limit yourself in service of something deeper. And maybe, slowly, those choices will create something. Not the same as what your ancestors had. Not as complete, not as encompassing, not as automatic. But something real. A few people who truly know you. A few relationships that have depth and weight and substance. A sense of being seen, even if only partially, even if only occasionally, by someone who's paying attention. It won't fix the structural problem. It won't restore what modernity has taken away. but it might ease the ache. It might give you something to rest in, something more solid than the endless scroll of faces you no longer recognize, more nourishing than the carefully curated connections that substitute for real intimacy in your world. The fire is dying now. The light is fading. The warmth that once held everyone close is scattering into the night, and you can't call it back. But you can acknowledge that it existed. You can name what you've lost. You can stop pretending that the emptiness isn't real, or that it's your fault for feeling it. You can be honest about the cost of the world you live in, even as you accept that you're not going back. And in that honesty, in that acceptance, maybe there's a kind of peace. Not the peace of having what you need, but the peace of knowing what you need, of naming it clearly, of understanding why the restlessness persists, and the scrolling never quite satisfies, and the longing doesn't go away no matter how many connections you accumulate. You are looking for recognition, for witness, for the warmth of being truly seen. And you're looking in a world where such things have become rare, where the structures of daily life actively work against the sustained proximity and embodied attention that make real knowing possible. This is the tension you live in. This is the ache you carry. And maybe you'll carry it until the end. Maybe it's part of what it means to be human in this particular moment of history, caught between the world your body was designed for and the world you actually inhabit. And maybe the best you can do is acknowledge the gap, stop blaming yourself for feeling it, and make what small choices you can to create moments of genuine presence and connection in the midst of all the noise. The lantern light is gone now. The faces have vanished into shadow. And you're here, alone with the darkness, with the silence, with the truth of your isolation and your longing. But you're also here with something else, with understanding, with recognition of what's been lost and what still remains, with the knowledge that the ache you feel isn't pathology but humanity, isn't weakness but the echo of needs that are ancient and legitimate and worthy of acknowledgement. Rest now. Let the searching stop, at least for tonight. Let the phone stay dark. Let the faces fade. Let yourself be alone without trying to fix it, and without reaching for distraction, without pretending the emptiness isn't there. Just feel it. Just acknowledge it. Just let it be. Because sometimes the only way through is to stop running, to stop searching, to stop trying to fill the hollow place with things that can't actually nourish you. Sometimes you have to sit with the loss, name it clearly, feel its full weight, before you can begin to imagine what might be possible on the other side. You miss being known. This is the truth underneath all the restlessness, all the scrolling, all the accumulated connections that don't quite connect. You miss something you never actually experienced, but that lives in your cells as memory, as expectation, as need. You miss the warmth of lantern light on faces that recognize you completely, that see you over time, that hold you in sustained attention without requiring you to earn it or perform for it or justify it. And that missing is okay. It's not something to be fixed or optimized away. It's not a problem with you. It's a natural response to a profound loss, a reasonable reaction to living in a world that promises connection but delivers isolation, that offers freedom but creates fragmentation, that gives you access to thousands of faces while leaving you unseen. Feel the missing. Acknowledge it. Let it exist without trying to solve it. Because in the acknowledgement, in the honest naming of what's gone, you create space for something else. Not a solution, not a return to the past. But perhaps a clearer sense of what actually matters, what truly nourishes, what your soul needs beneath all the noise and distraction. And maybe, with that clarity, and you can make different choices, smaller circles, deeper investment, less performance, more presence, less breadth, more depth, less optimization of your social life, and more willingness to be embedded somewhere, with someone, in a way that requires sacrifice but offers something real. The fire is gone. The light has faded. The faces are lost to shadow and time, and the relentless march of modernity that has scattered what was once gathered close. But you remain, and the need remains, and the possibility remains, however small, of creating moments of genuine recognition in the midst of all the distance. Rest in that possibility. Rest in the acknowledgement of the loss. Rest in the truth that you are not broken for wanting more than the modern world typically offers. Rest in the knowledge that the ache you carry is ancient, is shared, is the echo of something essential that shaped humanity for hundreds of thousands of years. The lantern light on faces you no longer recognize has faded into darkness, but you're still here, still breathing, still feeling, still capable of being seen, of seeing others, of creating the small circles of sustained attention that might, over time, begin to address the deeper hunger. Let yourself rest now. Let the searching stop. Let the faces dissolve into shadow. Let the warmth that once was become, for now, just a memory, just an ache, just a reference point for what human connection can be when it's given the time and space and proximity to become real. You are alone, but you understand the aloneness now. You've named it. You've traced its origins. You've stopped pretending it's something other than what it is. And in that honesty, and in that clear-eyed recognition of the gap between what you need and what you have, there is a strange kind of comfort. Not the comfort of having what you need, but the comfort of knowing what you need, of understanding why the restlessness persists, of recognizing that the modern solution, more connections, more access, more digital bridges across distance, doesn't actually touch the place that aches. Rest in that knowing. Rest in the darkness. Rest in the silence where the lantern light used to be. And maybe, tomorrow, you'll make a different choice. Maybe you'll reach out to someone nearby, someone you can see in person, someone you can invest in over time. Maybe you'll say no to the endless accumulation of shallow connections and yes to the harder, slower work of being genuinely known. Or maybe you won't. Maybe tomorrow you'll pick up the phone again and scroll through the same faces, searching for the same thing you can't find, caught in the same patterns that leave you empty. That's okay too. This isn't about fixing yourself or solving the problem or optimizing your way to deeper connection. This is just about acknowledging what is, about naming the loss, about understanding that the ache you carry makes sense, that it's rooted in something real and ancient and legitimate, about giving yourself permission to want more than the modern world typically offers, even if you can't always have it. The faces are gone. The light has faded. The warmth of being truly seen has become so rare that you've almost forgotten it exists. But the memory remains, written into your nervous system, encoded in your deepest needs, waiting to be acknowledged, and even if it can't be fully satisfied. Acknowledge it now, feel it, let it be, and then, finally, let yourself rest. The fire is out. The night is deep. The faces you once knew have dissolved into shadow, and you're alone with the darkness and the silence and the truth of what you've lost. But you're also here, still breathing, still feeling, still carrying the ancient need to be known, to be seen, to matter in someone's sustained attention. That need is real. Honor it. Acknowledge it. Let it guide you, even if only in small ways, toward the depth and presence and genuine connection that your soul still craves. And for now, for tonight, let that be enough. Rest. The search is over. The lanterns are dark. The faces have faded. And you at last can be still.